We had already started Bi-corporeality last month, and we're going to go back and hopefully complete Bi-corporeality and hopefully complete Transfiguration as well. But just to recap, it's been a month already. I'd like to just read the very first item of Bi-corporeality so you can understand it well, because all the talk that we're going to have here is mostly examples of Bi-corporeality, but if you don't really grasp the mechanism to which Bi-corporeality happens, all of the reading will be meaningless. So you need to really understand the mechanism of this property. And keep in mind that just about everything that you talk to read and talk about here is in relation to the properties of the perispirit. The perispirit is the great actor of everything that we'll be talking about here. Okay, so Sarayda, we're just gonna read item 114, and then we'll talk about it,
Okay.
and then go back to where we stopped last month. Okay?
Okay. Absolutely. Apparitions of spirits of the living. 114. Bi-corporeality and transfiguration are two varieties of visual manifestations. As extraordinary as they might seem at first sight, it would be easy to realize through the explanations that may be given for them that they are not outside the order of natural phenomena. Both are based upon the principle that everything that has been stated concerning the properties of the perispirit after death applies to the perispirit of the living as well. We know that during sleep, the spirit partially recovers its freedom. That is, it isolates itself from the body. And it is in this state that we often have the opportunity to observe it. But the spirit of both the living and the dead always retains its semi-material envelope, which, for the same causes that have already been referred to, can acquire visibility and tangibility. There have been well-proven cases that can leave no doubt on this point. We will cite only a few examples that we know about personally and whose truthfulness we can guarantee. Additionally, everybody can consult their memory and add their own examples.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bi-corporeality, right? Two bodies. By two, corporeality, the body, in relation to the body. All of us, incarnate spirits, are bi-corporeal beings, right? You understand that? We have this organic, palpable, physical body, and we have our spiritual body, ethereal body that we call the perispirit. We have spoke a lot about the perispirit, you know, some of the property of the perispirit being ethereal, have the ability, being extremely malleable, have the ability of modifying its shape, its morphology, in accordance to the desire of the mind. The perispirit is also, like the physical body, an instrument that does not have intelligence. That intelligence belongs to the spirit. And the spirit, using its intelligence and free will, controls both bodies, the perispirit and the physical body. And the perispirit has many properties. The ones that are important for us today here is the ability to associate with ectoplasm and make itself, I'll use the word more dense, but just as borrowing the word. I don't know if dense is exactly the right word. And becoming more dense, it can become tangible, can become feasible, can become palpable. okay, and has the property of modifying its own shape in accordance to the will of the mind. We also understand that through medium, the mediumistic phenomena, so to say, during the approximation of a different perispirit to another perispirit, there is an exchange of energies, an exchange of will. That's how we have the phenomenon of psychography, or psychophony, in which the perispirit of the medium is somewhat expanded, it's slightly separated from the physical body, or is loosely connected to the physical body, if you prefer, which allows the approximation of another perispirit, and there is that exchange of energies, that contact, in which energies you can read as a thought as well, in which the thought of the other perispirit from spirit in the spiritual world can be sent to the perispirit of that medium, and from there the medium will be able to speak those thoughts of that spirit, we call psychophony, or will write those thoughts, what we call psychography. I think that is, we all kind of understand that now, but if there is any question regarding this, please ask it now. So, the physical body has automation. Either the physical body does not need the continuous intellectual abilities of the spirit 24/7 to function, meaning that the heart is automated a little bit as long as it receives enough energy supply. The brain will continue to do what the brain does as long as it receives the necessary energy, glucose and oxygen. The kidneys will continue filtering the blood and so on and so forth, and the digestive system will continue with movement of peristalsis, moving things along as it does, even if there is no continuous input of the spirit. What I'm saying is that there are times in which the spirit and the perispirit may loosely disconnect from the physical body, and the physical body continue to work well. Now, you'd imagine that the physical body will not be able to perform some activities that requires intellectual input. So it is understandable that when the physical body is at rest, that's the opportunity that the spirit has to lose or disconnect itself, because the physical body at rest does not require intellectual input of the spirit. So that's how we dream. That's how every night when the body's at rest sleeping, the spirit is free to go somewhere else, always still somewhat connected to the physical body. If there is a complete separation of the body and the perispirit and the physical body, then the body will die. Okay, so although during dreams we can go to very different places and have many different experiences while the body is at rest, they still somewhat connected, primarily by one wire, if you like, or a cord that is called a silver cord that is always connected for as long as the physical body is alive. And those principles of the pure spirit is essential for us to understand, to appreciate, and to a certain degree to believe in those two phenomena that we're talking about here, bi-corporeality and transfiguration. So by bi-corporeality, it means that we can separate ourselves or some of us can, from the physical body while this physical body is at rest, and appear somewhere else. And you would question, how is that possible? Well, naturally, what's going to appear somewhere else is the perispirit. The perispirit having all the properties that I just spoke about, the ability to interact of ectoplasm. And we studied the physical phenomena already, in which the perispirit, when associated with ectoplasm, it can make itself visible, tangible, and even perform things as if it was incarnate. So bi-corporeality is basically the property of some mediums, very, very rare, who are able to document it being seen at two places at the same time. Any questions here? So last week we stopped at just a minute. You complete 118 today. You should read start at 119. Is there any question regarding the possibility of the bi-corporeality or how it works? Because what Kardec going to present to us is examples. And those examples, the one that he's bringing, that are documented. And it's very important. It's been documented in a non-spiritist manifesto. It's documented, both of them here, in this case, with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church that does not believe in mediumship, but witnessed and documented this phenomenon. They call it a miracle. But since we do not believe in miracles, we do not believe that anything can be supernatural. If something happens, it has to be in accordance to natural laws. We just have to expand our knowledge of what are the natural laws. And I think the example present is enough, but if there are many other examples in the literature, in the spiritist literature, especially I'm just going to mention of Euripides Bassanufo. But for now, let's read the ones that Kardec presents to us here. We're going to see some answers given by Alfonso de Liguori provided. And in his answer, there will be a little bit of incompatibility what he's saying and what the doctrine says. You have to keep in mind that we're talking about here of a Catholic person that perhaps, I would imagine, here remains lots of it understanding of spirituality from the Catholic Church yet. But let's see what they say here.
Okay. Spirit doubles, Saint Alfonso of Liguori and Saint Anthony of Padua. 119. Let us return to our subject. While away from the body, the spirit of a living person can show itself just as the spirit of someone who is deceased can, and with all the appearances of reality. Furthermore, for reasons that we have already explained, it can acquire momentary tangibility. It is this phenomenon designated by the name bi-corporeality, which has given rise to stories involving doubles, that is, individuals whose simultaneous presence may be confirmed in two different places at the same time. There are two examples of this occurring, not in popular legends, but in ecclesiastical history. Saint Alfonso of Liguori was canonized before the time normally required for having shown himself simultaneously in two different places, which was regarded as a miracle. While Saint Anthony of Padua was preaching on one occasion in Spain, his father, who was in Padua, was being led to his death after having been accused of murder. Saint Anthony appeared at that moment, proved his father's innocence, and made known the identity of the true criminal, who was later put to death. It was proven that at that time, Saint Anthony had not left Spain. When we evoked Saint Alfonso and questioned him about this incident, he provided us with the following answers.
Okay, just a minute, thanks.
Okay.
So these are two examples of bi-corporeality documented not only in history but with the Catholic Church. San Alfonso of Liguori was a priest who was very devoted to charity. He used to practice tremendous amounts of education to the poor and was very fraternal. He was one of the priests that was more outside of the church, serving the community, than inside of the church, spending time with the books. And although he was a very intellectual individual as well, and he was said to appear in places practicing charity, helping others, and at the same time, he was in the church, and that was documented and proved. The case of Santo Antonio de Padua is also a very famous case. That Padua is a city in Italy, and he was in Italy, but his father was condemned to a crime that the father did not committed in Spain. After being condemned for the crime, and he was going to naturally be put to death, Saint Anthony of Padua appeared there in the court and defended the father and proved his innocence and declared who was the true criminal. And when they investigated, they see that Padua, or Anthony of Padua, was correct. So they let the father go, and unfortunately, they put the true criminal to the life sentence. And that case became very famous because he was in Padua, the city in Italy, at the same time when he was defending his father in Spain. Those are two very famous cases, especially Saint Antonio of Padua, that is well documented. Now, here comes the interview that Kardec, I imagine Kardec, had with the spirit that used the body that was called Alfonso of Liguori. And let's see what he says.
Okay. When we evoked St. Alfonso and questioned him about this incident, he provided us with the following answers. 1, would you be willing to give us an explanation for this phenomenon? Yes. When humans have completely dematerialized themselves through their virtue and have lifted their soul toward God, they can appear in two places at the same time. Here is how. The incarnate spirit, sensing the approach of sleep, can ask God permission to go somewhere. This spirit or soul, if you wish, then abandons the body along with a portion of its perispirit and leaves the coarse matter behind in a state that resembles death. I say resembles death because the body remains connected to the perispirit and the soul to matter by a link that cannot be defined. The perispirit then appears in the desired place. I believe that that is everything you will want to know. Number 2, but that does not give us an explanation for the visibility and tangibility of the perispirit, does it? Since it is detached from matter and depending on how highly evolved it is, the spirit can become tangible. Number 3, is the sleep of the body indispensable for the spirit to be able to appear in other places? The soul can split itself whenever it feels attracted to a place different from where the body is. The body does not have to be asleep, although in that case it is quite rare. However, at such a time, it is not in a perfectly normal state. It is always in some degree of ecstasy. The soul does not actually split itself in the literal sense of the word. Rather, it radiates in several directions and can thus manifest itself in many places without becoming fragmented, just as light can be reflected in several mirrors at the same time. Continue?
Please.
Okay. 4, if someone were deep in sleep while the spirit was appearing somewhere else, what would happen if he or she was suddenly awakened? That would not happen, because if someone intended to awaken the person, his or her spirit will return to the body in anticipation, given that the spirit would have read the thought. An identical explanation has been given to us many times by spirits of both deceased and living individuals. St. Alfonso has explained the double presence phenomenon, but has offered no theory concerning visibility and tangibility.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So again, in the spiritual center over there, in the Spiritual Society of Paris, they were able to evoke and bring Alfonso for a few questions. And the very first question, would you be willing to give an explanation of this phenomenon? The phenomenon, the explanation that he gives to us is very much in accordance with Spiritism teaches us, right? Important to mention on his answer over here, when humans have completely dematerialized themselves through their virtue and have lifted their soul towards God. In reality, the bi-corporeality is only being documented with more evolved spirits, not, perfected spirits, because if it was perfect, the spirit would not be incarnated in our planet, but spirits who have, at a minimum, being able to allow themselves be comfortable to leave the body at rest and perform some function somewhere else. And all the functions, at least what has been documented so far in those literatures and in the spiritist literature, are noble actions, meaning that I have never read, I have never seen any case of bi-corporeality in which the spirit goes somewhere to create a problem, to cause some harm. Everything that I've seen so far in bi-corporeality is for something of good, for some charitable act, basically. So it does make sense that it's for spirits, that it's a little bit morally evolved, a little above average, so to say. Okay. And another thing is in accordance with our literature is that physical body at that moment should be at rest. Okay? When it says the incarnate spirit, since the approach of spirit is sleep, okay, can ask God permission to go somewhere. Um, Again, as we mentioned before, it's logical that the physical body needs to be in some degree of rest that does not require the intellectual input of the spirit at that moment. I mean, you could not be cooking, you could not be driving, right? It has to be not performing pretty much anything so the spirit can act somewhere else while the physical body maintains its autonomic functions, right? And then he says, the spirit, or so if you wish, then abandons the battle along with a portion of its perispirit and leaves the coarse matter behind in a state that resembles death. In spiritism, that would not be so absolute resembles death, but it resembles more the deep sleep. Resemble that death, which resembles no autonomic functions also. And as much we understand it just seems to be at rest, not necessarily even a very deep sleep. And I'm going to use an example that is in our literature to explain what I'm saying here. Then when it goes to number 2, he is not able to explain the tangibility of the perispirit. His answer is, since it is detached from matter and depend on how highly evolved it is, the spirit can become tangible. You understand that tangibility does not necessarily require to be so morally evolved. It requires an ectoplasm. It requires the association of an ectoplasm to make itself tangible, right? And we do know cases of spirits who become tangible for not really noble activities. Cases of ghost houses, the cases of spiritual perturbances that is spirits who are able to act on ectoplasm and create problems to others. So it is not really compatible with what we understand over here. Okay. And then number 3, is the sleep of the body indispensable to the spirit to be able to appear in other places? He says that no, but it's extremely rare. And and it says that in such time it's not perfectly normal state. That's why I like to use the expression in a state of rest instead of say sleep or deep sleep. But has to be in a state of rest that the physical body does not require intellectual input of the spirit. And here I'm going to use the example that we have in our literature, the one medium that have performed this apparently multiple times was Euripides Barçanufo in Brazil. He was, amongst many other things, a teacher. And he had this faculty of bi-corporeality, and it's documented that he had that many times. And even during the time that he was in the classroom, he would give the students some activity to do, ask silence while they're doing the thing, and put his head down and go into a state of rest I'm not gonna say he was sleeping, okay, and would perform bi-corporeality during those moments. And it said that even students understood that when he did those act that asked the students for some kind of to perform some kind of activities and ask for silence for some time, they knew that he would go in some kind of trance if they did not understand everything, and they did respect and they were agreeable with providing the silence, what the things was, what he person who performed his action. A very famous case. He went and put his head down in his chair, in his table for some time, and then he got up and he told the classroom they had just performed a very difficult partum, delivery of a babe, and somewhat distant, and that the husband was just about to walk in the classroom and ask for his help to perform that delivery. Just a few minutes later, a man enters in the classroom and asks, please, can you come with me? My wife is about to give birth and the partner is very difficult. She's suffering too much. We need to come and help. You need to come and help her. And he even described to the student how that man would be dressed and everything else. And Bassanofo, trying to calm down the father in this case, told, no, everything's okay. I already have been there. The baby was born, he's okay, and his wife is okay. He can go home, everything's fine, no problem. And the man, of course, could not believe. He was insisting, he says, please come with me, you have to come with me, I don't know what you're talking about. So Bassanov excused the students who went into the house with the husband to find the woman holding the baby and asked, kind of surprised, why did you come back, no, Mr. Bassanov is not a doctor. He was a pharmacist, amongst other things. Why did you come back? You just helped me, just deliver the baby and everything's fine. And the husband was, of course, could not understand anything that was happening. This case is very much used in every time that we talk about bi-corporeality. It was very well documented. And the reason I like to bring this case now is because I cannot say for sure that he was in such a deep sleep. And I know for sure that he was not totally awakened. It's not really logical to accept not to be in a degree of trance. Every mediumistic phenomenon requires a state of trance. It may be very, very light trance that is not even perceivable. And depending on the activity of the spirit for that mediumistic phenomena, the body must be at rest. You cannot imagine that, let's say in this case, the spirit and the perispirit separates for the physical body, goes somewhere else, associates with ectoplasm, and now uses intellectual ability to perform a partum, the delivery of a baby, and the physical body would be somewhere else performing something else, right? Because the body does not split. And that's very important explanation of Kardec over here. The soul does not actually split itself in the literal sense of the word. There is no division of the spirit of the perispirit. If that was the case, then the physical body could continue have intellectual abilities, and the perispirit perform intellectual things somewhere else. But that's not the case, right? And by radiating it in several directions means that the spirit is still somewhat connected to the body there. Very, very high water spirits can indeed radiate themselves into several places. When, let's say as an example, when we pray and ask for the presence of Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is in our Spirit Center. At the same time, down the block, there is a evangelical temple where all asking for Jesus, and somewhere in Italy, in the Catholic Church, they also ask for Jesus and say, why Jesus has to choose where he's going to go, where he's going to pick. Jesus can radiate itself in its energies, its thoughts to several places at the same time. So the whole world may be praying for Jesus at the same time, and Jesus will be present through the radiation of its energies, its thought, everywhere. Of course, we're talking about a perfected spirit, but the same could be for a very high order spirit. As an example that I can use here, Dr. Bezerra de Menezes, who also was documented as in spirit, not by corporeality, to have assisted and performed also delivery of individuals in different parts at the same time, radiating its energies, being able to help individuals at different times as a spirit, not by corporeality. Okay. Any questions here? Hi, Anna.
Hi, Elmo. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Elmo, I wanted you to explain a little more about what you're saying. Uh, you're explaining as radiating itself as being different from corporate, yeah, the
By
other.
corporeality.
Yes. And also, we hear a lot, especially Dr. de Bezerra, of well, I guess the Portuguese word is egregora. I'm not quite sure what would be the word in English.
What's the Portuguese word?
Egrégora, the egrégora de Dr. Menezes, which I think it means that a group of spirits associated with Dr. de Bezerra are allowed to, for example, be in multiple spiritist centers and help with the work, but it's not exactly Dr. de Bezerra. He wouldn't be in 200 places at the same time, but there are spirits aligned with his vibration or his understanding that are there. And I guess that's what they call this egregora. Is it related to this the discussion of today and this radiation that you're mentioning, radiating in himself to different places? Is that it?
No, the radiation is exactly what the word means. That to radiate is like it's like the sun that radiates its sunlight, its energy to the whole solar system. Right, the same way they're receiving the sun rays right now in New York City. The same thing's happening in Mexico and in Brazil and the Philippines and in the moon and in Jupiter and in Mars is receiving some of these energies at the same time. That's the ability of high order spirits performing the same to radiate its energy thought. Let's make energies, in this case, synonymous with thought, okay, or thought is energy, to multiple times at the same time. So again, let's use the example of Jesus, because at the same time that we are here calling and asking the presence of Jesus with us, within us, the same thing is being asked of him in every church, in every temple, Christian temple, and many homes and many hospitals. And somebody is about to go to surgery right now, is asking Jesus for help. And does Jesus has to pick one or another? Or being such high order spirit, can it radiate its energy? Can radiate its peace, its love? to everyone who is calling for his presence, for his assistance, for his help. That is what radiation means over here. In the case of Bezerra de Menezes and many others, it is his team, his group, his associates, those who work with him and under him, who is representing him in many different parts at the same time. It's said the same thing helps with Mary, Mother of Jesus, that she has her army of spirits that go out there helping, assisting the very suffering spirits, like in the example of Ivone Pereira book, Memoirs of a Suicide, that it is her team, is her group of spirits who go there rescuing those suicidals who are ready to be rescued, just like in that book, those four spirits have been rescued. It is a team of spirits. I don't know what the word they use in there. Aggregate, I don't know, I'm not familiar with that word, but it is his team, is a group. They are able to represent Bezerra de Menezes in many different places, working under his guidance, perhaps radiating his energy to those individuals of his group, of his team, to assist different spiritual centers at the same time, or different individuals at different times. Does that explain it? You need to remember that
Yes.
he does not work by himself. Spirit usually has his group. Some spirits with him the same way that in the André Luiz books, we see that when they go into a journey to do something, there is always a team, a group of spirits who are associated for that specific purpose, for that specific project. It's not only a necessary help, but it's also an exercise of charity, is an exercise of teaching, preparing those spirits to eventually be also leaders and spread the teachings and spreadability of help others. So very often, those higher spirits will have a group of spirits that work with him and under him or her for many specific tasks. And Dr. Bezerra is very known to have this group of spirits that works with him, that is like his team, so to say.
Yeah, I found the word in English. Apparently, it's very similar. It's egregore, and it means a collective psychic spiritual energy formed by the thoughts, emotions, and intentions of a group of people. So I guess that group of people working with a particular elevated spirit and connecting to people praying or people inspired by the same spirit. I mean, but yeah, great. Thank you. It's clear now, the radiation as well, much, very clear. Thank you.
Yeah. And when we say the team of Bezerra de Menezes, may not necessarily be all discarnate spirit. Bezerra de Menezes may have associated that are incarnate that he may use to assist him in many tasks associated with incarnate spirits here as well.
Thank you.
I think Chico Xavier have spoke about that Bezerra had some individuals placed in different areas that he's used as an instrument for him to do his work, many work of assistance for the poor. He continued to be the doctor of the poor, and he used some naturally mediums for his work here. Oh, those are very good questions. Thank you. Okay, so this is another case, another And you see the Kardec is taking cases of bi-corporeality that is being documented in history, right? The ones in the Catholic Church, and now we have one here with the Roman Empire. Right?
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Vespasian, 120, Tacitus reports a similar case. During the months that Vespasian spent in Alexandria while awaiting the periodic return of the summer winds and the season in which the sea was safest, many wonders occurred that were regarded as heaven displaying its protection and the interests of the gods in the prince. These wonders increased Vespasian desire to visit the sacred dwelling place of the gods in order to consult them regarding the empire. He ordered the temple to be closed to everyone else. He then entered it and was completely attentive to what the oracle was about to proclaim. When he saw standing behind the oracle a highly important Egyptian named Basilius, whom he knew to be ill in a place several days away from Alexandria, Vespasian later asked the priest if Basilius had come to the temple that day. He asked various pedestrians if they had seen him in the city, and he finally sent horsemen who returned to assure him that Basilius had, in fact, been 80 miles away at the time. Consequently, he no longer had any doubts that the vision was supernatural and that the name of the Basilius became an oracle to him. Tacitus' History is book, chapters 81 and 82, translated by Burnoff.
Okay, I don't think there's much to add over here, except that, again, Kardec makes sure that he brings those examples for history that are documented in history. Tacitus is a historian, he has his book, you can follow and read his own book on chapters 81 and 82. And see what this case is. The only thing I like to add here is that, again, most of cases of, personally, the only cases of bi-corporeality has been performed by other spirits, or at least more elevated spirits. More elevated spirits will be the best way to put it here. And this Basilides was a Egyptian scholars that very intellectual, that also work for the people, and his function, so to say, was to bring moral teachings to that community, always with the permission approved of the pharaoh, of course, but he's one who is one of the ones who are always addressing the properties of the heart, that in Egyptian culture was the soul, practically, or the one that related to spirituality. And Basilides, one of those intellectual who would write and explain the moral values, the things associated with the spirituality, with the higher spirits. They would kind of divide the body, with the diaphragm cutting the middle, and things associated with the viscera was pertaining purely to the things of earth, and above the diaphragm, especially the heart, was the thing associated with spirituality, with the thing that transcends the physical. And Vespasian, at this time, he was the emperor of Rome, that, as we know at that time, dominated Egypt and dominated the whole known world at that time. I don't, I don't have much to add here, except that, again, this is in the annals of history. Any questions? Okay, 121, please.
The person who appears simultaneously in two different places, therefore, has two bodies, only one of which is real, while the other is merely an appearance. One could say that the former has organic life and the latter has anemic life. When the person awakens, the two bodies reunite and the anemic life re-enters the physical body. It does not seem possible, at least we have no examples, but reason seems to demonstrate that when separated, the two bodies cannot simultaneously enjoy the same degree of active and intelligent life. Moreover, concerning what we have just stated, we would emphasize that the real body cannot die while the apparent body remains visible. The approach of death would always call the spirit back to the body, even if for only a moment. This also means that the apparent body could not be killed, since it is neither organic nor composed of flesh and bone. It would vanish the second that anyone wanted to kill it.
Let's go back here. I don't know if I skipped the question number 4 or I skipped to mention that. So Kardec asked Alfonso de Liguori, if someone were in deep sleep while the spirit was appearing somewhere else, what would happen if he or she would suddenly awakened? That would not happen because if someone intended to awaken the person, his or her spirit would return to the body in anticipation, given that the spirit would have read its thought. I think the comment of Kardec here in 21 is in reference to that answer from San Alfonso. That, as I mentioned, in order for the body to be able to, in order to the spirit per spirit to be able to appear and have and perform some activity somewhere else away from the body needs to be at some degree of rest. The body cannot be performing anything that requires intellectual input, because again, the body cannot, because the spirit does not split into. The fact that it can radiate itself does not imply that now it can make the body perform things at a distance. So the body has to be at rest. Now the question, and this question appears sometime also, is what if the body is needed for some acute thing, something that is happening right there, that the answer is that the spirit perispirit would return to that body immediately. A body will not die without the presence of the spirit perispirit together, of course. It would return immediately. If for some reason, let's just act as an example, that the spirit is performing something somewhere else, and something's about to happen to that body would return immediately to the spirit. That leads to understand that how rare this kind of things are. Somebody gonna ask me, because I ask myself. Also, Barçanufo is performing a very difficult partum somewhere else, and let's say that somebody's attacking the classroom at that moment, trying to, I don't know, try to kill Barçanufo. What would happen? Barçanufo would return immediately to the body, as it's stated over here, as it's stated in the codification. What would happen to the woman in the middle of the delivery? I don't have an answer. I question that myself. Okay, so the only answer that will provide is that it's extremely unlikely that would possibly happen, because the good spirituality would perhaps manage that situation to allow nothing to put that physical body at risk while he's performing something of good, what's performing a charitable act, as in this case. Besides that, I don't have an answer. And if you didn't think of it, because I think everyone will think of it. You know, what will happen then? In the middle of the middle of delivery, something is about to happen to the physical body. Now the physical body, now the spirit will return immediately to that physical body. So what happened to the woman, to the baby in the middle of that partum? My only answer again is the good spirituality would prevent that from happening, would prevent that physical body be placed in that acute situation that requires the body to return immediately. Besides that, if the spirit return to the body, I think it would be a tragedy to the woman and to the baby. Therefore, I do believe that the good spirit would prevent that situation to occur. Any questions? Okay, so now you're going to a different, this we're done with bi-corporeality. But I will stick with the phenomena that is directly related to the perispirit, and all the properties of the perispirit that we spoke about remains for this topic and remains for everything. Again, the perispirit has its properties, and those properties are the same with if the spirit is incarnate or discarnate. That will not change. Okay, and another type of mediumistic phenomena is transfiguration, in a simple way, is to modify the shape, the morphology, the general characteristics of a physical body. They say the quality of the voice, the type of the voice, and even some extremes that we're going to read over here. And some, to me, as a reader, really, really extreme case of transfiguration. So by transfiguration, see the change of the appearance of the physical body, of the type of voice, of the physical body during this type of mediumistic phenomenon. Okay?
Okay. Transfiguration, 122. We shall now consider the second phenomenon, transfiguration, which entails a modification of the appearance of a living body. Regarding it, here is a case that occurred between 1858 and 1859 on the outskirts of St. Eteria, and whose perfect authenticity we can guarantee. A young lady of about 15 possessed the strange faculty of being able to transfigure herself, in that at any given moment she could take on the appearances of certain deceased individuals. This illusion was so complete as to lead one to believe that one was actually in the person's present, due to the similarity of the facial traits, expressions, voice tone, and even the specific speech patterns. This phenomenon repeated itself hundreds of times without any interference from the girl's will. She often took on the appearance of her brother, who had died a few years earlier, reproducing not only his facial features, but also his girth and height. A local doctor who was often present during these strange occurrences wanted to assure himself that he was not the victim of an illusion. So he performed the following experiment. We gathered the information from the doctor himself, the girl's father, and many other trustworthy and honorable eyewitnesses. The doctor decided to weigh the girl in her normal state, and then during the transfiguration, in which she took on the appearance of a brother who had died at age 20 and who had been much larger and
Sorry.
stronger than she. The doctor subsequently verified that during transfiguration, the girl's weight nearly doubled. The experiment was conclusive, since it was impossible to attribute the appearance to a simple optical illusion. We will try to explain this type of occurrence, which has always been regarded as a miracle, but which we simply label as a phenomenon. Okay.
In most cases of transfigurations that the spiritualist literature brings the case not as drastic, so dramatic as the one that is brought here by Kardec, that was in his spiritualist review as well. Usually it's much more subtle, this basically completely change of the physical body. It usually is a mild change of the face, of the facial expressions, primarily the shape of the lips and things like that. By contraction of facial muscles or relaxation of facial muscles as well. Very often we note, and it's been documented, the quality, the type of voice and mannerisms. We may take the type of gesticulations that is not familiar, that is not comparable with the medium itself in outside of a trance state. But drastic as it's documented here by this young lady is extremely rare, and to tell the truth, is the only one that I know that is so dramatic. And I think that requires tremendous amount of explanation to be accepted. And Kardec will make a very important point by the end of the book that I'm going to save for later regarding this topic. Basically, this young lady, when a state of trance, in this case a mediumistic trance, when receive the approximation of the perispirit of a deceased person, should receive the interaction with the energies of the perispirit of the deceased spirit with her own would be so intense that the physical body would drastically modify itself to have the appearance of the person had when that person died, that spirit with the body of that person died, right? So as an example, if I had this kind of mediumistic property, and let's say they would receive my father and have the interaction of both of our perispirit, that would be so intense that I would be looking like my father, not like you guys are used to see my appearance, that my voice would change, my body weight would change, my appearance could change, my gesticulations, the way I move in general when I'm speaking would be different, and all of that would be consistent of the way my father was when he had its physical body. And And I'm saying that because you have to relate. You can relate if you have seen my father when he was alive, right? This is drastic. This is extremes, but it'll also be a transfiguration. If using the same example, now I would speak like my father spoke. I would use the kind of words that my father uses. But beyond that, my facial weirdly study had subtle changes. It changed to be look more like my father than look like myself. That we had seen, okay? And I personally think that this requires a lot of explanations to us. And this particular case, again, is the only one that I know that is so drastic that the weight of the young lady would double when she is in a mediumistic trance and received the spirit of her deceased brother who died when he was 5 years old, and being a man perhaps was much bigger than her, and with tests done, the weight doubled when she was in that trance. Let's see what 123 tells us here.
Okay. In certain cases, transfiguration can occur as a result of a simple muscular contraction that can cause a very different facial expression to such a degree that the person becomes unrecognizable. We have often observed that this in a few somnambulists. However, in this case, transformation is not radical. A woman may appear to be young or old, beautiful or homely, but she will always be the same woman, and her weight will neither increase nor decrease. However, in the case of the young lady, there was obviously something more evolved. The theory of the perispirit will send us in the right direction. We accept in principle that the spirit can give its perispirit any appearance it chooses, and by modifying its molecular arrangement, it can render it visible or tangible, and consequently opaque, that while separated from the body, the perispirit of a living individual can undergo the same transformations, and that this change of state occurs through a combining of fluids. Next, let us imagine the perispirit of a living person, not separated from the body, but instead radiating all around the body in such a way as to envelope it like a kind of vapor. In this state, it can undergo the same modifications as when it is away. If it loses its transparency, the body can seem to disappear, to become invisible and veiled as if it had been immersed in some kind of a fog. It can even change its appearance and become luminous depending on the will or power of the spirit. If another spirit were to combine its own fluids with those of the former, it can substitute itself for the person's appearance in such a way that his or her real body disappears, covered by an exterior fluid envelope, whose appearance can vary as the spirit wills. This appears to be the true cause of this strange phenomenon, and we must state that the transfiguration is quite rare. The difference in weight can be explained in the same way as a change in inert objects, that is, the intrinsic weight of the body itself does not vary, since the amount of its matter does not increase. Instead, the body is influenced by an outside agent that can increase or decrease its relative weight, as we explain in number 78 above. Therefore, the transfiguration into the form of a child would probably decrease the weight proportionately.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I must confess that as we explained in NOS 78 footnote above, I did not find it. I'm sorry for that. I really look for that. I don't know where to find it. And I think that explanation would be very important. So I'm really sorry I would not find it.
Mm.
So as I said, this idea of changing the weight and completely changing something else, it requires a really a good explanation for me to accept it. Okay, personally. As an spiritist, I'm not taking as a blind faith anything that is somebody tells me. I don't care who that body is, and even Kardec has to come out with some good justification, good explanations for me to accept this phenomenon. And to that point, Kardec will give a very important point on the next reading as well, that I'll comment when we get there. So first of all, it says that it's extremely, extremely rare. Okay, again, that's the only one that I know, and Kardec makes sure to say that extremely, extremely rare that it happens. And if it happens, it have to have an explanation. You have to conform with natural laws. Point is, we don't know all the natural laws, so you know very, very little of the natural laws so far. So you cannot be like the materialist that if science cannot prove, it's not possible. We can only say that science cannot prove yet, but it's being documented by reliable sources, and we will take or not take. Okay, and then I think it's fine if someone says no, and that is too much for me to accept. And I think it's actually intelligent and important somebody has the freedom to do so. The transfiguration that are more subtle, not as drastic as this one, again, as we're seeing, Devout Pereira Franco has that transfiguration when he received the spirits of Bezerra de Menezes. His face changes, his voice changes, the way he uses his hand. Then outside of the trance, he uses hands a lot. And when he's in that trance, his hand is very stable, does not move almost at all. That's a phenomenon of transfiguration that happens. But I'm sure that if you wait, Devout Pereira Franco during that trance receiving Bezerra de Menezes would not vary as much. Definitely not double. I mean, double is so extreme. Now, one explanation here is Kardec provides here, and some I accept myself, is let's remember that the perispirits maintain all its property while incarnate and discarnate. And one of the things that it's hard for us to explain, hard for us to understand, because if it was easy to understand, it would be easy to explain. And even to imagine is what Kardec is providing here. Let's imagine that the perispirit surrounds the physical body, and that's what they say is the location of the perispirit. We know the perispirit is not inside of the body. Is it parallel to the body? Is it involving? In this case, Kardec says us to imagine, right? Imagine the perispirit of a living person, so while incarnate, not separated from the body, but instead radiating all around it in such a way that is enveloped it like kind of vapor. So let's imagine the perispirit is surrounding the whole spiritual body. Okay? That we can imagine, right? And again, the perispirit has all the properties while incarnate or discarnate. So it has the properties of associated with ectoplasm as well to perform physical phenomena, right? Let's assume that in this case, it undergoes some modification and it loses its transparency. It becomes opaque, becomes visible. But at this moment that it's become visible, it is in association with another perispirit that it's utilizing the perispirit of the medium, and it's reshaping the perispirit of the medium to its own shape. So using myself, if I was a medium, receiving my father, in association of my perispirit, the perispirit of my father. My father, with my permission, with my consentment, you would use his mind, his will, to reshape my perispirit to look like him. So far, so good? Did I lose anybody here? Okay. All right. So my perispirit now is still transparent, has taken the morphology, the shape of my father. My father using his intellectual ability and my consent to do so. Now we add a third agent, and the third agent would be an ectoplasm that now will render my perispirit visible. No longer opaque, no longer transparent, but now opaque. So everyone in the room would see my perispirit. And my perispirit at the moment that is being modified by ectoplasm made it tangible, but also modified by the will of my father, making it look like my father. So therefore, I would be looking like my father. And important here, and I missed, since the perispirit is surrounding my physical body, you'd not be seeing my physical body. You'll be seeing my perispirit that is surrounding my physical. If that particular moment, my physical body would be like inside of my perispirit, that is now visible, opaque, and with the form, the shape of my father, while my father was alive, of course. Does it make sense? Did I lose anybody here? Because I have to read this 3 or 4 times to really grasp. Now, this possibility I accept. That to me is quite reasonable. Okay. I doubt I would double my weight, but I am bigger than my father was. So to have to lose weight in that case would be always a good thing. But if anybody has any difficulty in accepting this, I think it's totally logical because I still have a problem with the weight thing. Okay, and since I could not find this explanation 78 footnote, I'll try to find it somewhere else or where is it. But there is one possibility that Kardec brings. Now the very first last sentence, therefore, transfiguration into the form of a child would probably decrease the weight proportionally. That would be even more difficult for us to accept, at least myself to accept. Again, we spiritists are not taking things for blind faith, just because Kardec said it is. No. It's not because a high order spirit said it is. You're not going to absolutely discard, so it's impossible, but we will use our intellect and try to make sense of it, right? And that's what Kardec does here, especially when he brings the talk about visibility that I like to read, so we can close the meeting for today. We have 7 minutes. Let's go. That's all right.
124.
Yeah, I'm sorry, visibility, no. Yeah,
Okay.
124.
Yeah. Invisibility. We can understand that the body can take on a larger appearance than its own or an equal one, but how can it assume the smaller appearance of a child, as we have just proposed? In such a case, wouldn't the real body supersede the limits of the apparent one? That is why we have not said that such an occurrence has ever been actually produced. By referring to the theory of specific weight, we simply wanted to show that the apparent weight might also decrease. As for the phenomenon per se, we will neither affirm nor deny its possibility. However, if it is indeed possible, the fact that we cannot explain it satisfactorily does not does not invalidate it. We must not forget that we are still at the beginning of this science and that it is still far from having said the final word concerning this point, as well as many others. Besides, parts of the body that would exceed the limits of smaller one could perfectly well be rendered invisible. The invisibility theory naturally highlights preceding explanations and those that refer to the occultation phenomena.
Well, let's finish 25.
Okay. We might have added a brief discussion of the strange phenomenon of a genius, which, as extraordinary as it might appear at first glance, is no more supernatural than any of the others. But since we have already explained it in the Review Spirit of February 1859, we believe it would not be worthwhile to go into detail at this time. We would simply state that it is a variety of tangible apparition and that a state of certain spirits who can momentarily assume the forms of living persons so as to produce a perfect illusion.
Okay, good.
But
So what
is it illusion or not? Because it just finished with the word illusion. Is it really an illusion?
The generally means not produced, right? No, generally to be engineered, to be made. So a generally means not made, not produced. Kardec is used the word illusion here is because the general is defined as the temporary state of a spirit materialized, palpable, with all the characteristics of the physical body, temporarily. Okay, it's not an illusion. You are seeing that, but what you are seeing, it's not a real physical body. It has all the characteristics. It is palpable. What you're seeing is the perispirit. It's not a physical body. That's what he's calling a perfect illusion. I don't like the word illusion here for myself, but the definition of the agenere is that the spirit, is that the perispirit taking the form of a physical body and having all the correct characteristics of a physical body, although it's not a physical body. Get it? I don't
Yes.
like the word. Yeah, I don't like the word illusion here because it creates that question that I have. So why is using the word illusion over here? But invisibility 124 and 125, that comes with tremendous amount of humbleness and feet on the ground. When he says that the science is not even 200 years old yet, it's a baby. And I mean, especially the time that he wrote this book, right? We don't have all the answers. As for the phenomenon per se, we do not need to affirm, not deny its possibility. Now he's referring to, okay, you can explain that the body appears bigger, but how can it appear smaller? And one of the things that important to say is that it had not been documented ever happened. Okay, when it says you can understand the body, okay, take on a large appearance than its sound. We're gonna use the theory of the perispirit involving the physical body, right? Or equal one. But how can it assume a small appearance of a child, as we have proposed, the very question, the very sentence of 123? Yeah, 123. In such a case, wouldn't the real body supersede the limits of the apparent one? Well, if you're going to involve my perispirit with a perispirit that is smaller than mine, the part that is bigger than mine would still remain visible. So that would be, half body, half appearance of mine and half appearance of my father, or half appearance of mine and half appearance of, let's say, a child that died at age 3. Right? It would not make any sense. That is why we have not said that such an occurrence has ever been actually produced. So this is very important. Kardec is telling us, we accept the theory that it could happen, but it's only a hypothesis over here that need to be put into test and being shown that it happens. And it says right here, it has not ever happened. So we accept the hypothesis, we accept the theory, but it has never been seen. It has not been practiced. At least he cannot say that it has, or we cannot say that it has. Okay. But as for the phenomenon per se, we will neither affirm nor deny its possibility. And here it's, to me, individual. Each one of us utilize our own intellect, our own intelligence, and our own free will and the intelligence of their heart as well. Say, well, I think it's possible. Or you may say, no, I don't think it's possible. I need more palpable evidence and I need more intellectual input for me to be able to accept this happening. And we're talking about a bigger body now looking smaller. Okay? And Kardec here is very humbled. It fits on the ground when it comes to it. Okay? Besides the part of the body that would exceed the limits of the smaller one could perfectly rendered invisible. Except again that you read that now I assume that I'm much bigger than my father and I would not fit in the perispirit of my father, so some part of mine would be showing. You say, well, maybe the spirits would hide that part of me that is bigger than my father. So everything would fit. A possibility. I personally don't like it, right? But I can't say it's impossible. I don't say it's impossible. I need more intellectual input, but I need more evidence for me to accept that. But again, now as individual, each one will take it or not take it. Okay, I'm on the side that so far I'm not taking it, but I'll say it's impossible. And then when it comes to generis, it's what I already explained, is a temporary state of the spirit, that it materializes in such a intense form that it looks alive. It has all the characteristics of the living human body, but it's not. And that's like that's called the perfect illusion. Again, I don't like the word illusion myself here, but in a sense, it is an illusion because you are seeing, you are touching, you are speaking with a body that is not real. But in reality, you're talking to a spirit using its perispirit. And when I say spirit over here, discarnated spirit, of course. I went over 4 minutes. I'm sorry, but I want to complete this. If there is any questions, please save now for our Q&A. And I hope there is some good questions that you arise from the discussion today. Any candidate, any volunteer to make our final prayer? So I'll do a final prayer for us. Our Father, our Master Jesus Christ, as you have taught us that we should ask, and it would be answered, that we should knock, and it would be opened. Here we are with our humbleness, placing ourselves at the hands of the good spirits that you place in our path, asking you for clarity, for understanding. For we are seeking to better ourselves, and we are grateful for this doctrine that brings so much light, so much clarity to us. We ask to be granted with good health of body and mind, with courage and discipline, to continue to question, to continue to knock, and doing our part to have the answers and the open doors that leads to our betterment. Once again, we ask for protection and guidance for each one of us for the week. All members of our group, for all our loved ones, our family, to have good health, organic, emotional, intellectual, and in our relationships, that we may once again elevate ourselves to be the best possible instrument at your hands, to spread your teachings with our behavior to the best of our abilities. May we be back here next week in good health, ready and willing to learn, ready and willing to share the very little that we were able to do so. And we ask permission to close this meeting. So be it.